Welcome back, everybody. I'm Frizz, and today we're going to be finishing going over the Kineticist. I love the Kineticist, and I went over all of the basic class features and all the universal class feats and a fair amount of the air feats yesterday. But today we're going to be going over the rest of it, because now my internet is actually good enough to continue streaming, because sometimes my internet just dies. So yeah, I think that I just kind of want to jump into things. So let's start where we stopped last time. So I'm not certain exactly how much I actually got through whenever I was going over things last time. So let's talk about Celestial Palisade. Palisade. I never know exactly if I'm pronouncing Celestial Palisade or Celestial Palisade correctly. But regardless, this is a 3-action impulse where you can create a wall of wind. It does only last until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain it for up to 1 minute. I assumed, but I did finish talking about Celestial Palisade, so I'm just gonna go over Celestial Palisade in its entirety. But basically, Wall of Wind is a fantastic spell for just screwing over ranged characters. But only physical range characters, so, arrows, bolts, and all that kind of stuff. It also just applies a penalty on anyone who's shooting through it, so just being able to snap your fingers and say, hey, fuck you, ranged characters, is a very powerful tool to have in your back pocket. And being able to sustain it, that isn't all that big of a deal. Or rather, it is nice to be able to sustain it. But it's a worthy cost to pay to get a wall spell basically for free. Wings of Air, though, is legitimately one of the strongest impulses that I've seen. Seriously, Wings of Air is amazing. This is no longer a true reaction. I did look over everything so I could actually kind of formulate my thoughts on things, but I skimmed through everything. So this is the real look at it. But Wings of Air is a 2-action impulse that is not overflow, where you get a fly speed equal to your land speed or 30 feet, whichever one is higher, for 10 minutes. And also, if you don't actually fly on your turn, normally you would fall, but if you use an air impulse while you're flying, you don't fall. Additionally, you can go straight up without treating that as difficult terrain. Also, once you hit level 14, you can target up to 5 additional creatures who all get the same fly speed. Now, they still have to fly every turn or they're going to fall, and they can't fly directly up like they're Superman. But this is the ability to give yourself a permanent fly speed effectively at level 8. You just have, because it lasts for 10 minutes, so you just use it again after 9 minutes. So it's effectively permanent. Because 2 actions every 9 minutes is basically permanent. And then at level 14, it's basically permanent for your entire group, which is amazing. So yeah, this is like legitimately Wings of Air, I think, is one of the strongest impulses in the game. If you have access to air impulses, your party is going to be wondering why you aren't taking Wings of Air. But moving on to level 12, because there's no level 10 air impulses, is Circulate Ki. Because, yeah, apparently Ki is related to air here, but basically this is a healing effect where you target an adjacent living creature and they regain 30 HP, and you try to counteract one of the following conditions: blinded, clumsy, deafened, drained, enfeebled, paralyzed, sickened, or stupefied. And successfully counteracting it reduces the value by 1 instead of entirely removing it, and then they're all immune to Circulate Ki for an hour. You can only attempt to remove an instance of a condition once, though you can try to remove it from a different source. Basically, if you fail at removing one condition from a particular source, you can't do that again until presumably the next day. And also, good lord, the way that this spell heightens, not a spell, it's an impulse. The way that this impulse heightens is absolute garbage, because 2 hit points per level is not very good, but being able to counteract a ton of really, really debilitating conditions for 2 actions is very good. So I'm not going to complain that much. Yeah, it's overflow, but being able to, I don't know, remove paralysis from an ally is a huge deal. Yeah, Cerulean Key with also mercy bonuses on land hands. Yeah, you could just remove all conditions from an ally in 2 turns. Just, no. I said, you're healthy. I don't care. Also, an important thing about Circulate Key is that it can actually remove Drained. Drained is normally very difficult to remove. I think the only way is the 4th level Restoration. Or one of the only ways is with a 4th level Restoration, which is very good to just have it permanently on tap, because generally you don't know you're going to get drained but when you get drained. So being able to just have something on tap where you can just, you know, remove it is great. And yes, that is a good point. The big man, I didn't see that rule. I've only ever played a Magus for a spellcaster, so I'm just not used to sustaining spells. Although, just to add something on there for Clear as Air, you can only sustain a particular spell or impulse for 10 minutes. But if you stop 9 minutes and 30 seconds and then just hide under like a box or something for like a minute or something, then you can cast Clear as Air again. So it's still an amazing impulse, but it's not nearly as good as I reacted to last time. It's very good, but not completely busted. But Wiles on the Wind is a very interesting one, because you speak lies into the air, which then creates an auditory illusion within 120 feet of you. And this is basically ghost sound on steroids. So people have to make a will save against your class DC. If they fail, they're fascinated for 1 round, and 2 rounds on a critical failure. And yeah, you can just make sounds with air. This is not a very, like, this is not a particularly powerful ability, but it's very fun. And I think that it works well for RP especially, because yeah, just being able to make noise is fun. If you have a good perform check, yeah, just start playing music. It's just fun. Again, I don't think that this is a hugely powerful ability, because Fascinated is just not a particularly strong condition, because I believe it gets removed the instant that literally anyone takes a hostile action towards the person who is fascinated or any of one of their allies. So it's not going to last very long in combat, but this can be really useful for, say, creating a distraction or just causing chaos. And who doesn't love causing some chaos? Moving on, because goddamn, there's a lot of feats in this playtest and I have to get through them, is Body of Air. So Body of Air is an overflow impulse, but it lets you sustain a gaseous form. And gaseous form is very nice. I didn't actually look at this yesterday whenever I skimmed. So you get a fly speed, which honestly, getting a fly speed from an impulse isn't all that special, because Wings of Air already exists, and by this point you can just give your entire party a fly speed. But you get a pretty substantial resistance to all forms of damage, and this is all forms of physical damage. You can still get burned, but trying to hit you with a sword isn't all that effective because you're hitting a cloud. But the important thing is that you can sustain this form. You have to sustain it, otherwise it ends after 1 turn. But I would personally rule that this is similar to Clear as Air, where you can sustain this up to 10 minutes or you become fatigued, rather than up to the normal 5-minute duration on gaseous form. This is incredible for scouting, although you really can just get a kind of similar effect with Clear as Air and Wings of Air, but Gash's form allows for you to go through doors that have any crack in them. So this is just a fun spell that you can get a ton, or impulse. I'm going to make that mistake a ton. Impulse, not spell. They're basically just spell-like abilities, but they're spells. So yeah, this is just a fun impulse that you can use for a ton of different uses if you're creative. Ferocious Cyclone is a much less creatively varied impulse, but it's pretty good. You create a 10-foot wide, 60-foot long line, and everyone inside of it gets, or takes 7d6 bludgeoning damage from the, like, basically hurricane force winds, but they get a reflex save. It functions as a basic reflex save for the damage, but if they fail, they get pushed 10 feet directly away from the central axis, meaning to the sides, not down the line, but to the sides. And if they critically fail, they get pushed 20 feet. And unfortunately, this heightens really bad, which kind of sucks, but it doesn't heighten well, but it's a very big area. You're effectively getting 120 square feet, I think, which isn't bad. Or, sorry, you're getting, what is that? 24 tiles, which is just a big area. And if you compare that to any cantrip, because this is basically a cantrip in that you can do it all day, this is way higher damage than a lot of cantrips. But yeah, I like it. Also, just, this is a side note completely unrelated to the Kineticist, but I really wish that dragons that had line and breath weapons followed these similar type of rules where, like, oh, you're fighting a gargantuan dragon, so their breath weapon, which is, like, let's say a line of acid because you're fighting a black dragon, it's a 10-foot wide line because they're huge and their mouths are huge, so it's a 10-foot wide line because line breath weapons just kind of suck. So they should get some fun treats. But regardless, let's move on to my favorite named impulse in the entirety of the playtest. Infinite Expanse of Bluest Heaven is metal as all hell, and it's hilarious. So you create a sphere of distorted air that brings the illusion of falling forever. So you create a 10-foot burst somewhere within 60 feet of you for 3 actions. This is, of course, an overflow infusion. Not infusion, impulse. God, there's so many Kineticist terms that are hardwired into my brain. Oh yeah, all of the level 18 feats were, like, written by someone who is an aspiring poet, and I love it. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, obviously this is an overflow impulse, and I'm going to mess up all the terminology because I'm playing a 1E Kineticist and terms are hardwired into my brain. But so you create an illusion basically in a 10-foot burst where people have to make a will save, and if the creature has the air trait, it gets 1 degree of success better. This lasts until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain it. And this has no effect on creatures that were not in the area originally whenever you use the impulse, which is very useful for not screwing over your melee party members. And also, this effect of the illusion ends whenever they leave the area or the impulse ends. And then they are immune, or temporarily immune, for 10 minutes. So basically, you can only use this once a combat. Or once a combat per enemy. But regardless, you can also have only one of them in effect at a time. This is very similar to a lot of other impulses that create area effects. If they get a critical success, nothing happens. If they succeed, then they're flat-footed until they leave the effect of the illusion. If they get a success, they're flat-footed. If they get a failure, they're flat-footed. But more importantly, they're fleeing from the illusory sky, but they're disoriented because they just see an infinite sky everywhere around them. Anytime that they try to use an action to attempt to flee, they have to succeed at a DC 11 flat check, or flee into a different space that's still within the illusion. And they determine where they end up, but they can't have it stay stationary if it's able to move. So this is a great way to just fucking cripple someone's actions if they fail. And keep in mind that this is not a incapacitation effect, meaning that you can use this pretty easily on everybody. But so basically they have a 50% chance of succeeding, or they have a 50% chance of being able to leave the bubble on every single action they take. And this is only a 10-foot burst, so most likely they're going to be able to get out no matter where they go with a single action. Now, they have a 50% chance to get out with one action, a 75% chance to get out with two actions, and I believe what is that? I mean, it's a 7/8 chance of getting out with three actions, but still, that's a pretty decent chance of someone just not being able to get out in one turn, which is cool as hell. Just spend an action, and then you have a chance to just completely destroy someone's ability to take actions because they are fleeing. They have to try and run, and they have a chance to just not be able to. So I can really see plopping down an infinite expanse of Bluest Heaven, which I love saying the name of, and then your Reach fighter who has a shit ton of attacks of opportunity and whirlwind attack at this level, running into the middle of it and just hitting people as they try and run out, and they can't. This is an amazing opening move. And then to continue the theme of completely over the top, just exalted sounding names, is Crowned and Tempest's Fury, which is a kinetic aura. So standard, this is a 10-foot emanation, but there's a feat that makes it up to a 30-foot emanation, and you also don't hit your allies. That's very important for this one. So you find a thunderstorm on the plane of air, and you just bring it here. So you place a crown of lightning on your head, sparks flash in your eyes, and lightning constantly strikes around you. So any creature that enters your kinetic aura or ends its turn there takes 2d12 electricity damage. Presumably, if they enter their aura, they take the 2d12 electricity damage, and then if they end their turn in the aura, they take 2d12 electricity damage. They can take it multiple times a turn. Also, if you don't have a fly speed, you get a 20-foot fly speed. If you have the Wings of Air impulse and it's active, if you just have Wings of Air, you instead get the fly speed from Wings of Air, which is your land speed or 30 feet, and also the extra benefits, so you can fly straight up, and that's so long as you actually use an air impulse, you don't fall. And you also get a 10-foot status bonus to all of your speeds, which is cool as hell. And you also, if you use an air elemental blast, it deals an additional 1d12 electricity damage. I really wish that there was a way to deal. This is something that I'm going to be talking about in the video that I make on the Kineticist that's going to be coming out on Thursday, but I really wish that there was a more support for, I guess, para elements. For example, I want electricity. I want to make an electricity focused Kineticist. I want to make a Kineticist that's focused around cold, or maybe one that's focused on acid. But that is what I'm hoping to find in the full version of the class. But that's just, I like cool electric people. I want to make a cool electric person. But regardless, this is a very, very fun feat, especially if you have the other feats that improve your ability with kinetic auras. Just, yeah, let's get a 30-foot emanation where everyone takes damage and I can fly and also do additional damage. That's just cool. And also this whole if you have Wings of Air, of course you have Wings of Air. Who wouldn't want Wings of Air? Yeah, I'm really interested to see the dual impulse feats, because I think they talked about that, of how they want to add more of those that actually combine different elemental blasts, like compound blasts from Pathfinder 1. But let's move on to Earth, because goddamn, Earth has a lot, and I mean a lot of really cool stuff. It has a lot of really tanky things, but also it has some decent battlefield control. So geologic attunement is a very useful, shockingly useful ability where you spend 2 actions This is an actual divination effect, and you're standing on stone, and you get tremor sense that is imprecise within your kinetic aura, which is going to be 10 feet at this level. Again, you can take the aura shaping feat to improve the size of the aura, and you really should if you're taking a lot of kinetic auras. It's an amazing feat. Also, if you move at all during your turn, then the effects of your tremor sense are suppressed until the end of your turn, meaning it's kind of hard to chase people down with this. However, any earth and stone in the area of your aura is difficult terrain, meaning you really want aura shaping so you don't screw over your allies. But also at level 13, the tremor sense becomes precise. Even imprecise tremor sense within like 10 feet of you is really useful for detecting, I don't know, invisible creatures. If it becomes precise tremor sense, one, you're tough, and two, yeah, screw invisible things if they can't fly. I don't know how I didn't make the connection until just now that this is just the Toph ability. Okay, well, I'm not that surprised. So, stepping stones. This is a kind of funny one that I don't necessarily think is amazing, but it's very fun and I like it. So basically you create a bunch of rocks, or rather you can move around a bunch of rocks. I guess you can create them. It is a conjuration effect. You do create the rocks, or you can flavor it however the hell you want. But basically you create a bunch of stepping stones that help you move around. So you can set them horizontally to make a path over a ground or like a liquid, or you can anchor them to a wall to make a staircase. The path can be 20 feet long, and the steps can extend 10 feet up the side of a surface. So you basically can go up a 10-foot wall or over a 20-foot liquid or something like that. Also, no square can be more than 60 feet away from you, so you can make a bridge really far away from you to help your allies, but you're probably not going to be able to do that. Or, sorry, you probably won't be able to go over said bridge. Moving across the path lets a creature ignore difficult terrain and hazardous terrain from the ground underneath it, and the discs last until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain the impulse for up to 10 minutes. And also for every 2 levels that you, for every 2 levels, you increase the length of the path by 10 feet or the height of the steps by 5. So, wanna walk across lava? You ignore the hazardous terrain. Wanna go up a wall? You can. Oh, that's actually a really good point of this would be really good for just ignoring difficult terrain or hazardous terrain that's made by your allies. So like, I'm forgetting if this is a spell in 1E or 2E. That is the problem of playing multiple 2E games in one 1E game and playing a lot of 1E in the past. I can't remember what spells are which. Is Burning Sands in... Nope. Basically, there are a lot of spells that I cannot think of currently because all the ones that I can think of are from 1E. But, yeah, but being able to plop down an area of effect, which, by the way, the Kineticist has a lot of area effects that turn the ground into a place where you do not want to stand. And then just saying, hey, allies, stand on these stones and don't die. It's nice. Stone Shield is very nice. You create a floating shield of stone, which is basically raising a shield. Although you do have to have your element of earth gathered, though. But it creates a +2 circumstance bonus to your AC. It's raising a shield. And you can still use the shield for anything that requires a gathered element. Although do keep in mind that if you presumably use an overflow ability, it is going to use up your element and your shield is gone, so try and avoid that. But also, and here's the stupid bit, you get a +2 circumstance bonus to fortitude saves and fortitude DCs. What the fuck? Spending 1 action to get that is insanely good. Like, Jesus. Also, you get shield block, and with very good hardness. I don't think that is as good as the hardness bonus from yeah, I don't think that the hardness is as good as the shield hardness bonus, but I could be wrong about that. But I think that isn't as high. But the big draw here is that once you shield block, you don't lose the shield. Like, that's the thing. This is a shield that you can raise with a single action that gives you a bonus on fortitude saves, and that doesn't have health. So you can just continue raising it every single turn and shield blocking. The Kineticist doesn't have a lot of great reactions, so honestly, shield block might be pretty good, although you do lose the gathered element. So you're gonna have to spend an action to get that back, unless you have a different impulse that allows for you to gather an element as a free action, which do exist, but they're much higher level. Trimmer is a very fun ability where you just punch the ground, which creates a tremor in a burst nearby. So it's a 5-foot burst within 30 feet of you. Anyone within it takes 2d4 points of bludgeoning damage with a basic fort save. Any creature that critically fails is knocked prone, and that ground is difficult terrain until the start of your next turn. And for every 2 levels, the damage increases by 1d4. This is actually, I believe, pretty... Yeah, looking at the damage here, this is slightly worse damage than a cantrip, because and this is overflow, so keep in mind you're going to have to gather your element again after this. This is definitely worse damage than a cantrip, because again, if you want to do this every single turn, you have to gather element, tremor, and then next turn gather element again, then tremor. But because it does 2d4 damage at level 1, if you compare that to, let's say, I don't know, Scatter Scree. Scatter Scree does 1d4 damage plus your spellcasting modifier, which is probably going to be 1d4 plus 4, which 1d4 plus 4 is a lot better than 2d4 plus, or sorry, just 2d4. Still, it's nice to have. It's just a, shit, I need to do damage in an area. A lot of martial characters don't have, oh shit, I need to do damage in an area. They kind of just have to hit things multiple times in an area. Duststorm is another kinetic aura. I would argue that you couldn't use elemental weapon and stone shield at the same time. However, I would allow a player, if I was GMing a game, I would allow a player to use stone shield and elemental weapon at the same time if the weapon they chose was shield spikes. Like, I would just say, yeah, you can make, or say, oh, you can only make shield bashes. Something like that, where I would allow it to work so long as you're making the attacks with the shield. Because it's basically combining the two abilities to make a defensive tool and a defensive tool, but I wouldn't allow you to say, make a shield and a gun. They would have to be both offensive and defensive at the same time. That's how I'd personally rule it. But Duststorm is pretty fun. You create a Duststorm, and every creature, including you, is concealed from any creature that's not adjacent. And any creature not adjacent to the creature is likewise concealed. So basically, if no one's next to you, you're concealed. Additionally, whenever you use this impulse and at the start of each of your turns, you can move one creature in the aura 5 feet. This can't move the creature further away from you. If they're unwilling, then they must succeed at a fortitude save against your class DC. I would personally rule that you can move yourself with this, which is fun. But yeah, use Duststorm. You're next to a cliff. push people off of cliffs. Speaking from personal experience in Pathfinder, pushing people off of cliffs can be pretty fun. Whirling throw is my favorite feat in the game for a reason. Yeah, this is pretty good, and it is especially good whenever you get aura shaping, because again, much bigger area makes this a much better feat. Although your allies would not be immune to anything, actually, with this feat. Or, sorry, your allies would not be immune to anything if you had aura shaping, because you're also affected by the concealment, so you can't just make them not immune to the concealment. You basically can grant your allies the same immunity that you possess with aura shaping, and since you don't have immunity to Duststorm, neither do they. Restoring Mud is a fun healing ability. So you throw mud at someone within 30 feet of you. This coats their body, healing their wounds and leaving behind a thin shell of mud. So they regain 2d6 hit points and 2 temporary hit points that last for a minute. And then they're immune to healing mud, restoring mud for 10 minutes. And for every 2 levels, the healing increases by 1d6 and temporary hit points increase by 2. So, this is some okay out of combat healing. However, it is substantially worse than Lay on Hands. If you're just going to be comparing it, because Lay on Hands is the stereotypical out of combat healing focus spell. Because at level 4, Lay on Hands will be healing 12 hit points, when Restoring Mud is healing 2d6. So effectively you have to roll boxcars to tie with Lay on Hands for out of combat healing. For in combat healing, Restoring Mud is nice because it's ranged. However, where the real power of this becomes is, let's say that you are, I don't know, a Kineticist who takes the Blessed One dedication for the Blessed One archetype. So now you have the Lay on Hands focus spell. So out of combat, you Lay on Hands someone, then you chuck some mud at them, and then you refocus for 10 minutes. And then after that's done, you don't have to refocus to use Restoring Mud on them again. You can just chuck it at them again. Also, the fun thing with Restoring Mud that makes it into actually a very good out of combat healing is that you can use this on everybody, not just one person. For Lay on Hands, for out of combat healing, or really every single piece of out of combat healing, without any investment, you can only use it on one person at a time. If you want to treat someone's wounds, you spend 10 minutes treating one person's wounds. Lay on Hands, one person at a time, until you can get more focus spells, or more than one focus spell per 10-minute resting. With Restoring Mud, you can just chuck some mud at every single person, wait 10 minutes, then chuck mud at every single person again. Yeah, it's a lot more volatile because it's not just flat healing, but you can heal the whole party out of combat, which is very nice, and you don't have to sink a bunch of skill feats or class feats into it. Steadfast. Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that's pretty sick. Steadfast Kinetics doesn't decrease the action cost of Mud. Like, it doesn't decrease the action cost of Mud, but it does give you some great bonuses. So it is a very good way to heal up an ally and buff yourself at the same time, but you can't do it for like 2 actions total. Still 3, but there is a level 20 feat that decreases the cost of 3 action impulses to 2. That might be what you were thinking of. There's multiple abilities that decrease the action cost of different abilities, but I think it's only decreasing 3 action impulses to 2 actions and decreasing the amount of actions for kinetic auras by 1. but only whenever you're switching to a different kinetic aura of the same element, if I'm remembering from yesterday correctly. But regardless, let's move on to Igniogenesis. So you create a permanent stone object. This is relatively simple, although you can attempt a crafting check to make it fancy. This has to fit within a 5-foot cube, and this is an incredibly delicate item and can be destroyed very easily. It can't have moving parts, but you make a rock. This lasts until you use Igniogenesis again. And at level 3, or sorry, not at level 3, every 3 levels, you create an additional 5-foot cube of the object. Now, where this gets very fun is that if you create an object underneath your willing creature, you cause them to rise up out of the ground, because you make a stone pillar for them to stand on. So, if you, say, have a ranged character in your group who doesn't like getting hit and doesn't have a very good AC, you just slap the ground and push them, like, I don't know, 10 or 15 feet up into the air, depending on what the level is. Who doesn't love a rock pillar to stand on and then just snipe all of the enemies in sight? So rolling Boulder is hilarious. I love it. You create a spherical boulder that rolls in a 30-foot line, hitting each creature in order until it reaches the end of the line or hits a solid surface. Everyone takes 2d8 bludgeoning damage with a basic reflex save. It's a basic reflex save, but on a failure, they move into an open space not in the path of the boulder. They don't have to move. If they don't have a place to move to, they are knocked prone instead. If they critically fail, they still get pushed around a little bit. This isn't particularly great. Its damage is not very good, but god damn it, you get to Indiana Jones people. And I love that. Yeah, just being able to Indiana Jones people is just hilarious. I do wish that maybe as it increased in level, it got up to a similar point as the air impulse, where it was like, oh, maybe once you hit level 14, it's now a 10-foot wide line. So then you can push just bigger boulders. That'd be nice, but it's still okay. And it's very good for property damage. Scratch that, every single thing about the Kineticist is very good for property damage. Like, this is property damage, the class. Spike skin is legitimately amazing. So, you touch a willing creature, and its skin hardens and forms a bunch of stone spikes. So the creature gets resistance 4 to physical damage unless it is caused by adamantine, and whenever the target is hit, that creature takes 2 piercing damage. This lasts for 10 minutes, but each time they're hit by a bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing attack, the duration decreases by 1 minute. And also, the target is now immune to this impulse for 1 hour, and you can only have this on 1 person at a time. So, Stone Skin is a very nice spell. Yeah, you just get Stone Skin basically for free. And you can alternate this, like if it goes, let's say you put this on a champion, but it runs out due to its duration and the champion getting hit. So then you put it on the barbarian. And then you cycle through the front line until eventually the champion is no longer immune anymore. This is very nice and just a great defensive buff to slap on people. And also, Python's okay. It's not great, but resistance is very useful, especially resistance to physical damage. Swim through Earth is going to make your GM hate you, and that is ideal. So, a burrow speed, basically you get a burrow speed equal to your land speed, and you can immediately burrow once. You don't get your ability to breathe underground, but you can generally hold your breath for a long time. This lasts until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain it up for a minute. If you're inside of the earth when it ends, you're pushed to the surface, but you're prone and slowed something until the end of your turn. I'm assuming that's slowed 1. Also at level 14, you can move through both stone and lava, though you still take damage from the lava. Up until level 14, you can only move through dirt, sand, or other similar loose materials. But once you can move through stone, you can just move through any stone wall. So, I don't know. Want to go and step through a wall, look, see what's on the other side, then step through so you can get intel in the next room over? That's perfectly within your grasp now, and you can do this all damn day. Swim Through Earth has a lot of potential, especially once you've hit level 14. Hurtling Rockfall is a fun little impulse. So you create a ball of stone and just lob it at someone, and then whenever it lands, it bursts in a bunch of shrapnel. So this deals 3d8 bludgeoning damage to all creatures in a 5-foot square within 60 feet, and then shrapnel and a 10-foot emanation for 2d6 slashing damage. Each creature either makes a basic reflex save, and basically if they're within both areas, they use the same reflex save for both damage types. And it increases in damage at level 14, 16, 18, although it does increase the slashing and bludgeoning damage separately. This is a fun way to just throw a frag grenade, basically at will, because try and tell me that that's not what this is. Yeah, it's just decent AoE, decent range. And, I mean, really, it's not that high of damage, but you can do it all day. If you properly position things and make it difficult for someone to approach you, which is honestly incredibly easy as an Earth Kineticist, you have a lot of ways to make difficult terrain. You can just start chucking people you can just start chucking things at people. And also keep in mind about how this range works. Like, 60 feet is pretty dang good. But 60 feet is 3 times your basic range increment as an Earth Kineticist. So, that's really good. Rock Rampart is very, very powerful. So you can create a wall of stone for 2 actions. It's normally a 3-action spell. This does end at the end of your next turn. However, you can sustain it up to a minute. Wall of Stone is an amazing spell. Like, let's say your party is getting pretty bad. You need a lot of healing, or you need to buff up, and you just don't have the actions to do it because you're under, I don't know, constant mortal danger because you're an adventurer. Wall of Stone, and then say, hey team, buff yourself up and let me know whenever you're done, and I can drop the Wall of Stone and we can hit the person that's probably trying to bust through the Wall of Stone right now. Wall of Stone at will is incredibly powerful. And also, every single Kineticist element does get access to a different wall spell. And yeah, they're all very useful. Although Wall of Wind is a bit less useful, but it's incredibly powerful whenever you do actually need it. So, I do think that Wall of Stone is the best wall spell, by the way. Because it's just a pain in the ass. So assume Earth's mantle. We're starting to get to the crazy worded ones. So basically you covered yourself in earth, giving yourself armor. This lasts for 1 minute. You don't need to sustain this armor, by the way. It is an overflow action for 3 actions, but hey, big buffs. So first you become large. If you were smaller, this increases your reach by 5 feet, or 10 if you were tiny. I'm surprised this doesn't make you clumsy. I think it probably should make you clumsy, because that's how the enlarge spell works, but hey, I mean, it's level 14, you're spending a class feat on it. It's not too crazy. The other option is that you get a climb speed equal to your land speed, but you can only use it to climb surfaces with earth, stone, brick, or other earth-like materials. Fair enough, a lot of things that you're going to have to climb are like that. GMs, please be ready for your party to consistently ask you what is the material of this wall or this cliff. If it's a general, like, natural environment, they can probably climb it. The other option is that you get a armor with a +5 item bonus to AC, a dexterity cap of +1, a check penalty of -2, and a speed penalty of 5. You also don't get any bonuses from other armor that you're wearing. This is not good. This is actually what I would call bad. So the armor that you get from this at level 14 is the equivalent of effectively, I think it's half plate. Half plate is, yeah, pretty much. It has a lower check penalty and lower, no, it has basically the same speed penalty. But regardless, the problem is that this is half plate that doesn't have any runes. And by level 14, you're probably going to be getting around the point where you're going to have a +2 potency rune. So this is good if you don't have any armor on you. Like if you're, I don't know, attacked in your sleep, you can just cover yourself in earth, so you don't have to take the 5 minutes it takes to put on heavy armor. But you can't use this as your main option for getting heavy armor, because it simply is just way below the curve. Even with the bonus at level 18, where it does increase by +6, congratulations, you're level 18, you have a +1 potency rune on your armor. This is a good backup armor, but not a good primary armor. Now, the other option is that the mantle that you put on gives you a +2 item bonus to fortitude saves, and a +2 circumstance bonus to fortitude save and reflex saves against attempts to shove, trip, or knock you prone. Again, you might think, oh, a bonus to fortitude saves, that's really good. It's an item bonus. It's not going to stack with any potency runes, and you're probably going to get to the point, around the point where you can get this, where you can afford a +2 potency rune for your armor. This isn't quite as good as it looks like. Now, the bonus on attempts to shove, trip, or knock you prone is pretty good. However, a lot of monsters just do it automatically. Oh, you do get all of these at once. Oh, I'm an idiot. I can't read. I kind of just skipped over things and thought that you can pick only one. Oh, no, that makes this a lot better and kind of worse. Maybe. I would need to do the math now for, let's see. So to match the armor bonus, you would need light armor or medium armor that you match the dex cap on with a +1 potency rune to match it, because it's effectively heavy armor. So, okay, this is the armor. You would only have worse armor if you have a +3 potency rune. So you're probably only gonna get like maybe a -1, maybe -2 to AC. Okay, this is much better now that I see that you get all of them. And also just improve, yeah, though this is way better. Although I still think that the item bonus to fortitude saves is hot shit. Yeah, no, that is a pretty dumb idea, but I think it's hilarious. I mean, you'd have to come in at level 18, but still, that's funny. Of dumping both strength and dex and then getting flexible blast. But yeah, the +2 item bonus to fortitude saves just isn't good. Actually, no, looking at it, you don't gain any bonuses from any other armor, meaning that this is basically just a bonus to, basically you don't get the potency rune from normal armor, so instead you get a potency rune, but it is just for fortitude saves. And additionally, if your strength is below 18, your strength is now 18. If your strength is 18 or higher, this armor grants you a +2 item bonus to your strength score. So it's basically an Apex item. So this is pretty nice, but very situational. If you're in a fight where you're fighting something that has a bunch of will save effects, not very good to lose your resilient rune to that particular, to those saving throws. If you can build around this though, it's honestly not that bad. Stone Guardian is a fun little kind of summon spell where you create a stationary Stone Guardian. The Guardian is medium-sized and is somewhere within 30 feet of you. It has an AC of 30 and 120 hit points, and it's immune to critical hits and precision damage, meaning it's gonna be here probably for a very long time. Dealing 120 damage without crits, that's gonna take a lot of actions. Additionally, it has all of your saving throw bonuses, but it automatically fails any reflex saves because it's a stone statue. Now, this lasts until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain it. Each time that you do sustain it, you can have it make a melee fist attack within one enemy of your choice. It has 10-foot reach, which is very important, and an attack mod of 25, which is not great, but the strike does deal 3d8 plus 10 bludgeoning damage, so pretty good damage if you do actually hit. Also, if the attack critically hits, they fall prone. Now, the fun part is that any allies that are within the Guardian's reach are under their protection, which means they get cover. Additionally, for every level that you get above this, the damage increases, basically every single statistic increases. This is especially good for plopping down a flanking buddy for a rogue, or just plopping it down in a position where you can protect your allies with cover. Now we get to the incredibly theatrical level 18 feats. So Rebirth in Stone is a 2-action primal transmutation effect, where rock overflows you before cracking open to reveal your body transformed into living stone. You get 40 temporary hit points, you're immune to critical hits and precision damage, you can't be pushed, pulled, or tripped when you're standing on earth or a stone. The damage die of your earth earth elemental blast is d10 instead of d8. Additionally, you can gather element to gather earth as a free action at the start of each of your turns, and this benefit lasts until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain it for up to 1 minute. At level 20, you gain 50 temporary hit points instead of 40, and the damage die of your earth elemental blast is d12s. That's a huge damage spike. D12s or D10s is pretty huge, and being able to gather element for free is really nice, though you do have to sustain this. Now, the Shattered Mountain Weeps is another fun one, where you create a massive sphere of rock that appears to hurtle downward, exploding into a bunch of falling debris and deadly shrapnel. This is a 20-foot burst that appears within 120 feet of you, so very good range. Creatures in the area take 96 bludgeoning damage with a basic fort save against your class DC. People who fail are knocked prone for the next minute. Rock continues to fall in the area, making it difficult terrain, and dealing 2d10 bludgeoning damage to any creature that ends its turn in the area. If you use this ability again, any previous area where the Shattered Mountain Weeping is in effect ends. Additionally, at level 10, the initial damage and area damage increase by 1d10. So the actual damage of this ability is not hugely high. However, it is very good for controlling enemy movement, because, yeah, if there's a spellcaster in the back of the room who's just gonna be, like, you're at level 18 or level 20 or something, let's say that there's like a 20th level wizard at the back of the room who's just, like, casting one spell and then, I don't know, quick and casting another spell, or using other one-action abilities because they're an NPC, or just all of that fun stuff. So you put this directly on top of them, and then now they either have to move and either have a chance of not being able to use a spell that turn, or not being able to do everything that they want. And then what you're going to do to them, maybe the next turn, or maybe the turn after? Hit them with another one. So they just can't do shit to you. This is very good to just drop on enemies who you want to annoy to death. The damage is not insane, but it doesn't need to be. It is predominantly a battlefield control ability. That's something that I would like to point out about a lot of the Kineticist, is I have not played the Kineticist yet. I haven't, like, playtested them. but I don't feel like the Kineticist damage is the main selling point of the entire class. I think that battlefield control is. I think that the Kineticist is predominantly a battlefield controller, and that they're amazing at damage mitigation. Rebirth and Mantle. Yeah, they definitely would. Mantle and Rebirth would definitely stack. You only have to sustain Rebirth and Living Stone. You don't have to sustain Mantle. Also, this is a sneak peek at the video that I'm kind of in the process of scripting currently for Thursday, but I wish that there was a burn-like mechanic from Pathfinder 1e, but not like actual burn. I just wish that you had a free action that you could use once a turn to sustain a spell from level 1 that, or not sustain a spell, sustain an impulse, but it did your level and damage to you that you couldn't resist. I just think that would be fun because there's so many fun sustain abilities. It feels like the action economy for Kineticist kind of sucks. So I want them to be a con-based class that can drain their own health to sustain abilities. That I think would be fun. But regardless, let's move on because there's still a shit ton to talk about. So fire. This is for all of the pyromaniacs who are currently watching. Because, good lord, you can light everything on fire. So, first is Burning Jet, which is just Avatar: The Last Airbender, people pushing themselves around on fire. It's great. So you shoot a bunch of flame behind you. You stride in 40 feet in a straight line, and this does not provoke reactions. For a lot of characters, you're going to move further with 2 actions to move 40 feet, or, sorry, let me correct that statement. You're not going to move further with a 40-foot stride in for 2 actions than just striding twice, because that's how the game works. However, you don't trigger reactions, which is the real selling point. Additionally, at level 6, you move 60 feet, but you could also choose to leap 40 feet in any direction. So you can cover I think a 30-foot gap with this. You could go 30 feet straight up, although you do fall normally. At level 10, this functions like level 6, but you can also hover after, leaping into the air. If you leap, you don't fall until the end of your next turn, which is amazing. And also, if you use Burning Jet again on subsequent turns, you remain airborne. This means that you're probably not going to use this to fly a significant amount in combat, because you're having to spend two actions a turn to stay in the air, but it's very good for out of combat, and sometimes, if you're fighting something who doesn't have a ranged ability, spending 2 actions a turn to fly in midair and then shoot a fire blast at them will win you fights. And that is a good point, Badoom, about wanting the class to function without a burn mechanic. Also, I'm just going to point this out because I forgot to mention it earlier, but Stone Shield seems like it's worded in such a way that it sounds... There's just ways that you... Stone Shield in particular sounded like it was originally written to incorporate other elements, and then they were kind of just found and replaced gathered element with like stone. So I'm expecting something like Stone Shield to also exist for probably wood and metal whenever those elements are finally out. I just wanted to point that out. Eternal Torch is Darkness Be Gone. So for 2 actions, you poke a hole to the plane of fire, which creates an eternal flame. I think the big problem with the class for me is not like a mechanical thing necessarily, but it's that it's a con-based class that only uses Constitution once, and that is for their class DC. And their class DC is very important for this class, but I wish that it was a bit more relevant. Which I just want health to be a resource, man. I like burning my health to do stupid things. I like playing risky. But regardless, Eternal Torch, you just create a flame that floats around someone. This does act like a torch. It does do damage. However, you still need to use it as an improvised weapon to actually attack with the flame. You can also have a maximum number of these eternal torches equal to your level, and you can dismiss each one individually. You can also give people colored flames. So I fully encourage you to make fun of your other party members' fashion sense. So give the goth person like black fire, or like hot pink fire just to mess with them. I fully encourage that. That is a good use of this ability. Additionally, at level 8, all of your torches, even the ones that you have already made, are much, much brighter. They're 3 times brighter to be exact. This is basically just the light spell, but you can have way more lights in effect at once than the normal light spell. Flame Eruption is a fun thing. So you create a 5-foot diameter cylinder that is 30 feet tall, and the bottom has to be within 30 feet of you. Interestingly enough, this doesn't have to be on the ground. Just the bottom has to be within 30 feet. You could create this midair. Each creature in the area takes 1d6 fire damage with a basic reflex save. All squares in the column are hazardous terrain until the start of your next turn. And a creature who moves through one of these squares takes 1 fire damage, and a large or larger creature only takes this damage once, even if they move through multiple squares at the same time. Cowards, let one of your etheric shards come back. Let me deal horrific amounts of damage to gargantuan creatures. Regardless, every 3 levels that you get, the initial damage increases by 1d6, and the hazardous terrain damage increases by 1. This is not huge in most fights. However, if you're fighting creatures that if you're fighting a bunch of creatures who have a weakness to fire damage, then this is actually very good because it's a very consistent way to be able to trigger fire weakness. So let's say hypothetically someone wanted to run a conversion to 2nd edition of the Reign of Winter adventure path. Good God, this would get a lot of like functionality. And yeah, the Kineticist does feel like a bit like a switch hitter combined with a battlefield control, which is a very interesting idea. Oh, that's a good point of just at will putting people in the dark, which would probably freak them out because they might think you're dead. But and also about how playing a natural ambition human to get more of the first level feats, you don't actually have to do that, because if you're playing a dedicated gate Kineticist, so only 1 element, you get 4 first level impulse feats. And if you're a dual gate, then you get 2 first level impulse feats, 1 for each element that you have. And if you're a universal gate Kineticist, you get 1 impulse feat a day, but you get to choose which one it is every day. Oh yeah, you also want the familiar. Like, of course you want the familiar. Why wouldn't you want a cat made out of fire? I'm definitely not biased, and I'm definitely not a cat person. Yeah, like, you can get a lot of stuff out of Eternal Torch. Like, there's just a lot of stuff you can do. Like, imagine telling your party, okay, I'm always going to be making traditional, like, red fire. However, if I think that I don't like someone, or I think that they are a potential traitor, or all of that sort of stuff, I'm gonna give them a green fire. So you can just pass around secret messages like that. So, or like, let's say your character acts like they are a pyromaniac. They are not an actual pyromaniac. So, and let's say you're a pretty stereotypical Kineticist that dumps charisma because they're not a charisma class. So you read someone and you think, oh, this person's lying. but I don't want to get in the way of the face in the party. Okay, I create a purple fire. Whenever I do that, I've told the party that that means that I think that this person is lying. There's a lot of ways that you can use this covertly, which I just think are super cool. And also, yeah, if you have a shadow dancer or a shadow caster in the party, they're gonna hate your guts. It's very bright. Although it's as bright as a normal, it's as bright as a traditional light spell, but you can have so much more of them. So Warming Nimbus is a fun, very useful kinetic aura. So whenever you use this, choose cold or fire. All creatures in your kinetic aura gain resistance equal to your level to that damage type. Additionally, if you have the elemental resistance class feature, your resistance from Warming Nimbus is cumulative with any resistance of the same type that you gain from that class feature. So basically, if you choose fire damage with Warming Nimbus and you've gathered fire, which obviously you probably have, your Pyrokineticist, you get effectively, I think, double your level resistance to fire damage. Or sorry, double your level resistance to fire damage that comes from an effect that has the fire trait, which is very good. Being able to just give fire resistance to all creatures in your aura is very nice. Do keep in mind, though, that you also give this to your enemies. So, aura shaping can be very useful to exclude enemies from your aura because they don't get the warming, friendly hug. I think that it will still last if you switch to a different aura type. The thing is that it's easier to switch auras within the same element, but the aura remains, I believe. I might be wrong about that, though. Let's look at kinetic aura. Yeah, it lasts until the encounter ends, or use a new kinetic aura, whichever comes first. Oh, that's lame that you can only use them in encounter mode. So that means you can't use this kinetic aura Warming Nimbus to deal with environmental fire damage. That sucks. I would totally house rule that you can use kinetic auras out of combat. And you can definitely put up a fire aura and then go and smack people around with earth. It just lasts until the encounter ends, you're unconscious, or use a different kinetic aura. But you should totally be able to use Warming Nimbus in exploration mode. If in combat you can protect people from a fireball, you should be able to protect people from, like, sunburn out of combat. But Blazing Wave, level 4. So flames flow out of you in a cascade, consuming everybody in a 30-foot cone. Everyone takes 3d6 fire damage with a basic reflex save against your class DC. Anyone who critically fails is knocked prone, and for every 2 levels, the damage increases by 1d6. This is a great AoE. 30-foot cones are pretty dang big, and yeah, it's an overflow ability, so you're gonna have to gather element again after it, but Jesus, 30-foot cone? Like, this is about comparable to Burning Hands. Like, actually, let's compare it to Burning Hands. It's a first level spell, but it does about half the damage as Burning Hands, but in twice the area, and you can do it every round, all day long. I think that's pretty good. Yeah, and most GMs will be allowing you to use it outside of combat, but for like Pathfinder Society play, you won't be able to, which sucks. It's not the same damage. So like Burning Hands at level 1, like a level 1 Burning Hands does 2d6 damage, and then for every level that it gets heightened, it increases by 2d6. So at level 4, it would be equivalently, sorry, if you heightened it to its maximum level that you could heighten Burning Hands as a level 4 character, that is 4d6 damage. when it takes 3d6 damage. So it's and then also at level 6 as a pyrokineticist, this would deal 4d6 fire damage. Where at level 6 as a wizard who heightens it up to 3rd level, it would be dealing 66 damage. So it really doesn't scale well when compared to Burning Hands. But you could do it all day. Yeah, you really are limited by sustaining a spell and gathering the element, because both of those take an action, and you of course have to gather an element again to start doing kineticist things after you use an overflow ability, which is why I'd like to see something that allows for you to sustain a spell by spending health as a free action, because that I think would be as long as it's a lot of health, it has to be a significant amount of health. Because I just like risky shit. But Crawling Fire, oh, this is a really fun one. So you mimic the motions of a beast, and then you make a beast out of fire. The Crawling Fire has a form of your devising, and it's small in size and occupies a space accordingly. It appears within 30 feet of you. Whenever you use a fire impulse, you can have it originate from the Crawling Fire instead. So you can fire around corners so long as you can see where you're targeting, to actually target the person. Or you can, I don't know, create flame eruptions based on the Crawling Fire. You can create auras, like the Warming Nimbus, based on the Crawling Fire. Additionally, you can just fire blast people through it, and you get a fire blast immediately upon creating the Crawling Fire. This can be sustained up for 1 minute. Also, whenever you use an overflow ability through the Crawling Fire, it immediately ends. Also, it's weird that the Crawling Fire is not actually an overflow ability. A lot of summon abilities in this class are actually overflow. But it can be sustained up for 1 minute. Each time that you sustain it, they can stride up to 40 feet. It can be attacked as normal, but any damage that someone deals to the Crawling Fire is dealt to you. You can only have one in effect at a time. It's also weird to me. Yeah, this is basically Summoner, except that it doesn't have separate stats. So, like, for a Summoner, your Eidolon is way better at hitting things than you, most likely. Well, you can cast spells, where the Crawling Fire, I wouldn't say that the Crawling Fire is like the feat version of a Summoner. I would say that Crawling Fire is the feat version of the Mere Thaumaturge implement, because you're basically just in a separate place. Also, side note, whenever Rage of the Elements comes out, or Rage of Elements, I don't know if the is in there, but I desperately want there to be an elemental summoner. So an elemental Eidolon for the summoner class, because god damn it, that's missing currently, and it bothers me. I want to summon elementals. Now this is a bit weird, because it says at level 8 you can create a small or medium Crawling Fire. At level 10, small, medium, or large, and level 14, small, medium, large, or huge. My question is, how does that change the stats remotely of the Crawling Fire? Does making it large actually increase its reach? Not all large-sized creatures actually have 10-foot reach. So I'm assuming that creating a large-sized Crawling Fire gives it 10-foot reach, and creating a huge one makes it a bigger target, but it gets 15-foot reach. But I would really like in the final version of the class for that to get specified, because it doesn't currently, which, let's say the Mantle of Stone ability or Earth Impulse states you become a large size. This increases your reach by 5 feet. Enlarge states how much it increases your reach by. I just want to know what the reach of the Crawling Fire is for basic fire blasts. Doesn't matter a huge amount. I want to know. So Wandering Smoke makes you the frontline's friend, especially a rogue's friend. So you turn a creature's corporeal form into a bunch of smoke. That creature can be you or a willing creature that you touch. They then turn into smoke and stride up to their speed during their movement. They can move through occupied spaces and ignore difficult terrain or greater difficult terrain that wouldn't impede smoke. You're not going to run into all that much that impedes smoke. Also, this doesn't trigger reactions. At the end of their movement, they return to normal, and their space is filled with smoke. That makes anyone in that space concealed. This lasts until the start of your next turn, or until dispersed by a strong wind. And for 1 minute, the target has smoke vision and their eyes glow orange. At 10th level, the target can fly instead of stride, using its land speed or fly speed, whichever is higher. This is incredibly good for patting your rogue on the back and saying, "Hey, get into a flank, dumbass, on my turn." Sometimes you just don't want to tumble through creatures. Sometimes they have attacks of opportunity. Now you don't have to deal with that. Additionally, at level 10, this is a great way of saying, like, okay, everyone, fly, I don't know, like 20 feet up a cliff or up into a building. Because you can just go over a 30-second interval to get people up a cliff. Or through a window. Because you can, this is basically baby Gash's form. Also, smoke vision is really weird, but pretty cool. Okay, so so Kindle Inner Flames is an abjuration fire impulse. So you target any number of willing creatures within 30 feet of you. Each of them sheds faint flying embers for a minute, which gives a +1 status bonus to reflex saves and acrobatics checks, and a +10-foot bonus to all speeds. Additionally, each target, or the next strike each target makes within on their next turn deals 1d6 additional fire damage. At 12th level, the bonus to reflex saves and acrobatics checks is +2, and the status bonus to speed is 20. It's kind of like a baby version of haste. It just makes people generally faster and avoid things better, which is, of course, very useful. The additional fire damage is okay. Again, of course, you're fighting things that are weak to fire damage. If something's weak to fire damage, you're gonna kick its ass. I have not actually looked at a water elemental in this edition. I don't know if like a water elemental actually has weakness, or do all water elementals have weakness to fire? I don't think that they do. Nope, actual water elementals are not resistant to fire, but yeah, that's the other real big problem with being a con-based class, is that you can't use your key ability score for any skill. So either I see maybe let them use some impulses to replicate or to add con to particular skills, or just give them some other shit that makes them particularly good at things. In particular, what is it called? It's a what is it? Adapt element. That's what I'm talking about. If they don't give a way to use con or just be better at particular types of skills, they need to make adapt element a lot better, because yeah, you need to give Kineticist things to do outside of combat. And I'm not sure exactly how I feel about, because currently 2E is very careful about not letting you change what ability scores you use for skills, so I don't know if they would be inclined to allow you to use con for particular skills. That seems like that is on the edge of being too good, but they definitely need a way to make skills a little bit better. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you have like a 16 dex. You're not going to be the worst at like picking locks or sneaking, but it is something that needs to be kept in mind for out of combat utility. And like even in 1E, yeah, with all of the like skills that were associated with each element, all that it did was make that it made that particular skill a class skill for the Kineticist. Like I believe for the Aether element, so for telekinetists, they got knowledge engineering and sleight of hand as class skills, and then you could also take a wild talent that gave you, I think, half your level as a bonus on those skills. So I don't know if that would necessarily work in 2E. I would have to think about it a bit more whenever I'm not like half asleep, because I am about half asleep. But I'm always half asleep, it's fine. Okay, so Kinder Inner Flames, good. Solar Detonation, very fun. So you take a 20-foot burst, some within 20 feet of you, within 60 feet of you, not 20. Each creature in the area takes 3d10 fire damage and can become dazzled or blinded. They get a basic reflex save. If they succeed, no, this isn't a basic save. This is a basic save. On a success, they're dazzled until the start of your next turn. On a failure, they're blinded until the start of your next turn. And on a critical failure, they are blinded for a minute. Now, this is, of course, incapacitation, meaning that it's not going to be quite as good. However, you do have to keep in mind that you're a Kineticist. This is heightened to your level. Basically, this is the equivalent of casting from your highest level spell slot, so it's actually a lot more likely to work than you might think it is initially. Architect of Flame is very good. You create a wall of fire for 3 actions. Now, the crazy part about this is you don't have to actually sustain this one. You have to sustain all of the other wall insights from other Kineticist elements. I don't know why you don't have to sustain the fire one. And also you get additional shapes that you can make, although it does do a bit lower damage. I think you should have to sustain this. I really think that you should have to sustain this, because really it's very good to be able to do this. Just 3 actions, wall of fire. You should have to sustain it to keep it on balance with the other wall effects. Furnace Form, this is basically just the fiery body spell. Until the end of your next turn. Also, all of your elemental blast add a die of their normal damage die instead of the 1d4 that your unarmed strikes get. All your foul add a die. Okay. Oh, okay. I was trying to make sense of what was written down here, but now it makes sense because it's, I think, yes, okay. I had not looked at the fire body spell. Also, you can, and yeah, this only lasts for 1 round, but fiery body is honestly pretty fun. Fire immunity, resistance 10 to precision damage, weakness 5 to cold and to water. Also, anyone who touches you takes 3d6 fire damage. And you deal an additional damage die equal to the normal damage die of your elemental blasts. And a buff to fire spells, which doesn't matter because you can't actually, do that. You don't have spells. Although you do have Produce Flame. Produce Flame for 1 action instead of 2, actually. And also a fly speed. Okay. The interesting thing is you can't sustain this to increase its duration. Instead, you have to wait for level 16, where its duration is 1 minute, which makes it much better. I think that the reason why you can't sustain it is because of the level 16 thing, and because it's really good. Like, it's weird that you can't sustain it. It bothers me, but it seems intentional. And speaking of coming in like a fireball, Arrive in Conflagration allows for you to teleport through fire. You instantly teleport yourself and 8 atoms you're wearing or holding into a clear spot within 120 feet that you can see that's adjacent to an open flame or to creatures taking persistent fire damage. If this would bring another creature with you, you can't. Also, in the space that you left behind, you leave a pillar of fire that looks like you. Each creature that starts its turn adjacent to the pillar or moves into it takes 2d6 fire damage with a basic reflex save against your class DC, and it lasts until the start of your next turn. So the important thing here is how useful this is depends a lot on how your GM rules things. For example, how big is an open flame? Because if your GM says it has to be something like a torch, this isn't as good. However, if you start chucking around all of your other fire abilities and the GM says, oh yeah, there's basically an open flame fucking everywhere because you're a pyromaniac that lights things on fire around with your very presence in every single one of your class abilities, then this is much better. Oh yeah, that's actually a good point of being able to like toss around, or like a kineticist running into a crowd of people, then leaving, and hey, you can pretty much always return to your allies if you put an eternal torch on them. That's an open flame. Yeah, I think that this is fun, especially... Okay, so actually, this is a fun ability for, like, one particular reason, which is you just have to go to an open flame, and because, you know, a lot of people in Pathfinder don't have dark vision, per se. Let's say you need to storm a castle or something, or you need to get into a place, and someone has a torch. You can teleport to that person. You can get really creative with this, and I think you have to for it to be good. It's not necessarily bad, but it's... You have to be very creative and have a lenient GM. But Horric Ignition is really what every ignition is, because people don't smell good whenever they're burning. Burning hair is especially bad. But you lob chemical flames at someone, emulating them with even more painful fire. So this is a ranged fire blast for 2 actions. This is also not an overflow ability, which is important. They take 3d6 persistent fire damage and are enfeebled 1 so long as they have that persistent damage. Now, something to ask your GM is... This is apparently chemical fire, which means that it might actually be slightly different than normal fire. So basically, just ask your GM, if someone jumps into a lake, are they actually going to put themselves like out? Or is it a grease fire and they're going to make themselves into a substantially worse position? Also, something of note here is that if you get a critical hit, that is going to double to 66 persistent fire damage, because that was recently announced in an errata with the core rulebook, where if you deal persistent damage on a hit, you double it on a crit. It was unclear before. So yeah, again, like pretty much everything in this entire class, if you're fighting something that has a particular weakness and you can exploit that particular weakness, you're in a very good spot. So if you're fighting a bunch of things that are weak to fire, hoo boy, you're in a good spot. And now for the, again, overly poetic 18th level feats. All shall end in flame. That was terrible. I can't... that was terrible. All shall end in flames. So this is fun. So this is either a 30-foot burst that is somewhere within 500 feet of you, which is insane, or within a 30-foot emanation. Again, you can choose to not target yourself with an emanation. Jesus, I can't speak. So this deals 76 fire damage with a basic reflex save against their class DC. Anyone dropped to 0 is reduced to a pile of ash. This is basically disintegrate. Although it doesn't affect objects. Although really it should deal damage to objects and it should disintegrate them to ash, but rules as written, only creatures are reduced to piles of ash, but your GM should be kind. Additionally, if you die, based on your own fire damage here, you return to life at the start of your next turn in the same space. Whenever you return, you have hit points equal to double your level. Yeah, this is just the suicide bomb, and it increases by 1d10 damage at level 20. This is a risky maneuver. Very risky to try and blow yourself up, especially because this is a fire effect and you have been gathering fire, meaning that you have resistance to fire damage, so you might not kill yourself with it. But if you can, like if you are low enough health that you know you're going to go down to the next hit, it's better to take yourself out with this because you're going to come back with more health anyway. And yeah, it's okay. It's not a huge amount of damage, but you can do it every other turn. I particularly like trying to like fly around or something and then just bombing everything underneath you, because again, this is within 500 feet, so if you have a way that you can fly or hover while still being able to use a 3-action ability, like this can get kind of nutty, because this is just like, this is all right in most combats. It's very good if you want to reduce an entire city to dust. This is the bombing ability. So, level 18, Ignite the Sun is kind of overkill, and I love it. So, you create, or rather, the fires of creation become yours to control. You create a miniature sun within a 5-foot burst. So, basically, I believe that is a 5-foot radius. I think that's a radius. Oh. Let's look at my go-to for things like this. Yep, it's a radius effect. So in a 5-foot radius ball you make within 500 feet of you, this sheds bright light in a 500-foot radius and dim light in another 500 feet. I believe bursts are corners. Yeah, emanations are based on squares and bursts are based on corners. But this sheds light in a huge fucking radius because it's the sun. Also, each creature in that 5-foot burst takes 46 fire damage with the basic reflex save. 46 at level 18 is basically nothing, but again, fire weakness is very, very nice for a fire kineticist. This sun also continually channels fire into you and your allies. Each of your allies within 20 feet deal an additional 1d6 fire damage on all of their strikes, and spells that deal fire damage and impulses that deal fire damage. So again, fire weakness is your best friend here. Because let's say you're fighting something at level 18. Let me just really quickly take a look here. Oh, that is not the best. Well, this is not going to be a particularly good example because it's a level 10 creature, but a lot of high level creatures are going to have like weakness 10, 15, or 20 to something if they have a weakness to it. So if you're fighting a high level creature that has a weakness to fire damage, adding 1d6 fire damage to basically every single attack that's made against it can deal a shit ton of damage. Additionally, this only lasts until the start of your next turn, but of course, god damn it. Hopefully I caught that spam in time. Okay. People are spamming some stuff in chat. I don't think that you guys can see it because I'm hot. I've hid that person from the channel, but that's fun. Regardless, you can. The sun lasts until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain this for up to 1 minute. And the first time you sustain this impulse each round, you can choose to increase the size of the burst by 5 feet, or you can make the sun fly up to 30 feet. Any creature that takes damage from the sun, with the same amount and save as normal from the initial damage, whenever the sun moves through their square, or if they end their turn inside of the sun. Each creature can take damage from the sun only once a round, and using Ignite the Sun again ends any previous one that you've made. So you can create a pretty big area, but keep in mind this is going to hurt your allies if you move it through their squares. But this is just a really fun AoE where you can make a ridiculous amount of bright light and just move around a sun, play basketball with the sun. You can just do a lot of fun stuff with this. This is also the best flare that you could possibly want if you need to get someone's attention. Let me just put this into comparison. So a flare beacon is an item. It's a level 1 item, but there's different versions. Where you basically shoot it up into the sky and it makes a big bright light. To put this into perspective, it says higher level beacons have a radius so large that they can be seen from miles away at light. Miles away at night. The highest level flare beacon is a level 16 item that sheds bright light in a 180 foot radius and dim light in the next 180 feet. Ignite the Sun is a 500 foot radius for bright light, then 500 for dim. You can see this shit from like anywhere so long as it's on the horizon. You're gonna cause light pollution. So, let's move on to water, shall we? The last set of feats. So, level 1, first off, we have, I think, one of our first actual reactions. That's an impulse. Shocking, because the Kineticist has hardly any reactions. But Deflecting Wave triggers whenever you would take acid, bludgeoning, fire, or slashing damage from an enemy attack, spell, or other hostile effect. And you have to be aware of this, and you aren't flat-footed against it. So, the water that you've gathered explodes out in a wave that blunts the attack. So you gain resistance to the damage equal to your level if it's bludgeoning or slashing, or double your level if it's acid or fire. Also, if the effect deals more than one applicable type of damage, apply the highest resistance, but only apply it once. Now, the thing that matters here is that this is an overflow impulse, meaning that you're going to have to gather your element again, but still, it's not that bad. That is a stupid amount of resistance. Like, at level 10, you could get resistance 20 to one attack, which is really nice. So long as that is fire, but again, fire is a very, very, very common damage type. So, not much to really say here. Also, this is a great way to just not have to deal with persistent fire damage or persistent acid damage, and persistent piercing or slashing, or bludgeoning or slashing, but those aren't very common. I can only think of one creature that I've ever seen do persistent piercing, or two, technically. Because the reason why it can basically negate persistent damage is because, oh, you gather your element, and then you take, like, persistent fire damage at the end of your turn, use a reaction, get resistance. Yeah, like this is really nice unless you really need your element gathered for something on your next turn. If you don't need your element gathered for something on your next turn, this is great. Otherwise, maybe take the damage. Tidal Hands. I would love impulse feats that use more than one element. That's my shit. I would love to see that. Like, I don't know, maybe creating a bunch of mud if you have earth and water, or I don't know, if for high level feat, creating a bunch of magma if you have fire and earth, or creating a actual storm and basically replicating the effects of the Tempest curse from the Oracle if you have air and water. There's a ton of different possibilities for these, and I could see so much stuff. And yeah, they did say that they would add them for the full class. I'm looking forward to this so much, and I want more than 6 elements, man. I just really liked how in 1E you could basically make a positive energy and a negative energy kineticist, and also I don't think that the telekineticist is gonna make sense for how this class is flavored now, which sucks because I really liked the telekineticist in 1E, but it works, it's fine. I'm not gonna complain too much about that. But moving on, because we have a lot of stuff to get through still, and my voice is slowly dying. But Tidal Hands is another overflow impulse. For 2 actions, you create waves that rush out in the shape of your hands. This is either 2 15-foot cones that don't overlap, or you combine the hands into a 30-foot cone. Each creature in the area takes 2d6 bludgeoning damage with a basic reflex save, and for every 2 levels, the damage increases by 1d6. Also, if someone critically fails, you push them 5 feet away from you. Yeah, I'll take bludgeoning burning hands. Every single round of every single combat. Just try not to hit your allies too much. Being able to point in different directions is nice. Getting a 30-foot cone at level 1. That's pretty sick. Water Dance is amazing. So you pick a willing target within 30 feet. A wave appears behind them, and it lets them stride 30 feet. If the target is in water, it instead lets them swim 40 feet. Additionally, the target gets a +2 circumstance bonus to defenses against any reactions triggered by the movement. Also, if you target yourself, you move twice instead of once. So spend 2 actions on yourself when you're in water to swim a total of 80 feet. Hell yeah. It's not quite a swim speed, but it's close. And this allows for you to just say like, hey rogue, I'm going to surf you into the flank, and you better be willing for that. It's just fun for battlefield control, moving around your allies into the place where you want them to be, and presumably they want to be. Now, Winter's Clutch is actually kind of interesting, because this shows off that they are not afraid to add cold effects, which is interesting, because they hardly added any electricity effects to air. There's a lot of cold effects in the water impulses. Yeah, this would be amazing for a for a dwarf kineticist, because yeah, you get to stride twice. You get to stride a total of 60 feet for 2 actions with a dwarf who normally can only get 40 feet. Winter's Clutch is this is a kinetic aura where you make it you let it snow. That's dumb. I was trying to make a Elsa joke, but I just really messed that up. Regardless, this is a kinetic aura where every creature in the aura, that enters the aura or ends its turn takes 1 cold damage, and they can only take damage from this once per turn. Also, at the end of each of your turns, you choose 3 continuous squares that become difficult terrain because snow starts piling up. Additionally, every single level, this damage increases by 1. If you're fighting in like a desert campaign or a campaign where you're fighting a bunch of things that are weak to cold damage, my god, you're going to be terrifying. And please, please, on God, get aura shaping so you don't screw over all of your allies and deal constant cold damage to them every single round. Your allies will thank you. So, return to the sea. You basically pick a creature, and they have to be willing, and then for 10 minutes, or until you next use Return to the Sea, they gain the effects of feet to fins, and they can breathe underwater. Also, they ignore the effects that water normally has on bludgeoning or slashing attacks, which I believe is a -2 to attack in this edition. I don't think that you half damage. I think that's 1E. That's definitely 1E. Also, once you hit level 6, you can target up to 5 people. Considering that you can reuse this impulse like every 9 minutes to continually re-up it, this is a very good way to allow the entire party to just be underwater and not be having a horrible, no good, very bad time. Most people are going to have a horrible, no good, very bad time whenever they're underwater, but you can make it at least somewhat bearable. Giving them a swim speed and the ability to breathe, and making it so all martials are at least somewhat functional, that's good. Veil of Mists is an interesting one. So this just gives you Illusory Disguise, but it only lasts for 10 minutes. Also, at level 6 and level 10, this heightens to a level 2 and then a level 3 Illusory Disguise. I need to double check exactly what it does. Whenever it gets heightened. So... yeah, no, that is not a particularly good impulse for combat, but my god, is that a very fun ability for RP. If you're in an entry-based campaign, effectively being able to disguise yourself at will to look exactly like individual people, or just to blend into a crowd, my god, could you come up with a lot of things for that. This is another one of those impulses that doesn't have a whole lot of direct mechanical power, but with creative use, you can easily find a bunch of uses for this. God, I love spam. Gotta love it. Because I keep on reporting the channels and doing everything I can to stop it, but they just keep on coming back. Sorry if I'm just dealing with this. Seems like they have a bunch of accounts, but that's just what it is sometimes whenever you stream. And because I don't make money, I don't have mods. But, yeah, Veil of Mist, very good. Very good. Moving on to level 6, Slippery Sleet. You choose a 20-foot burst within 120 feet, so 20-foot radius. Creatures in the area take 4d4 cold damage, the basic reflex save against your class DC, and areas are slippery ice until the start of your next turn. That means it's difficult terrain, and they have to balance across the ice. A creature that is flat-footed on the ice as normal. So this is insanely good area control, because yeah, the damage isn't great. It's going to have about the same damage as a cantrip in a 20-foot burst, so actually substantially better damage than a cantrip because it's over a big area. But difficult terrain, okay, sick. That that's a pretty large amount of difficult terrain. However, balancing is where things get fun. So, in case you didn't know, balancing is a separate action from striding, and you have to make an acrobatics check against a DC of 15 in this case. If you fail on that, you waste your action. And if you try to move still, you fall. If you critically fail, you fall prone. So the thing about this is, let's just, I don't know, let's take a fire giant. You're not going to be fighting a fire giant at level 6, or you could, but it would be a very rough time for you. So we take the fire giant, and I try and remember how stat blocks work. So a fire giant has a 30% chance of being able to balance. Because they don't have acrobatics. They're not trained in acrobatics. A lot of enemies are not trained in acrobatics. Let's take a lich. Liches are fun. Liches are not trained in acrobatics, so they can get fucked by this. Balance is not a rule that comes up all that much, but it's really annoying whenever it does, because if something isn't trained in acrobatics, okay, if something is trained in acrobatics, it is almost guaranteed to pass or critically succeed on that balance check of 15. However, if something doesn't have a very good dexterity, or it just isn't trained, it's absolutely screwed. Like if we look at a okay, a lot of enemies are actually trained in acrobatics, but a fair amount of them aren't actually. You can make some pretty good use out of this. Yeah, and even if they do pass, they're still flat-footed. And it's a 20-foot burst, that's all difficult terrain. Good luck getting out of that. If they're in a corner, they have to spend a lot of movement to get out of there. The only downside is that this is a 3-action impulse with the overflow trait, meaning you can't do this every single turn until you get to, I believe, level 20. I believe it's level 20 when you can actually do this every turn. But still, being able to just knock someone on their ass is great. I love this. This is like Grease on like steroids. Yeah, it's basically, imagine if you could use Grease pretty much at will, but it's a 20-foot burst instead of 4 5-foot squares. And you've got this. It's, I love it. So Standing Surf is also pretty fun. So this is just Wall of Water, but like all of the other wall impulses except for the fire wall impulse, you have to sustain this up to a maximum of 1 minute. Wall of Water is potentially the least useful wall spell that we've seen so far from any of these classes, because Wall of Wind completely stops most physical projectiles. Wall of Water just stops bludgeoning or slashing projectiles, but piercing projectiles still go through, but their range increments are halved. So the problem is that most physical projectiles are piercing projectiles, meaning that like someone with a bow in most combat situations is not going to be affected by a wall of water, because a wall of water has like bows have incredibly long ranges anyway. The big thing is that trying to move through a wall of water requires a swim check, meaning that generally speaking, they're going to have to stride up to the wall, then spend an action to swim, and then attempt a action to stride on the other side of the wall. So it's pretty good restricting actions, The big thing here is it doesn't actually stop line of effect, which is a big reason why I think that Wall of Stone is so good. Also, it's weird to me that it doesn't say what the DC of the swim check is for swimming through the wall of water. Like, this, just the wall of water spell doesn't have a swim check DC. It'd be crazy if it was actually your spell DC. But I would assume it's just a standard swim check, which is kind of lame, but it's not broken, and a lot of well spells are pretty dang broken. Regardless, Lowland Fog. This is a fun one. So you create a fog bank in a 10-foot burst within 120 feet. All creatures in that fog are hidden, and all creatures outside of the fog become hidden to creatures within it. Then one creature of the fog can step or stride, providing it ends this movement inside the fog, meaning nobody outside the fog knows where the fuck that person is anymore. Then, the fog lasts until the start of your next turn. However, if a creature attempts to target a creature within the fog, all observers can disbelieve the illusion after the effect is resolved. For instance, if a creature made an attack into the fog and guessed the location of the target, the flat check for the target being hidden would apply to that attack, and then all creatures observing would disbelieve the illusion. And then at level 14, you can let any numbers of creatures move instead of just one. This isn't great. Because it just gives you a 50% flat check for one attack, for 3 actions and overflow. I wish they got a will save to disbelieve it. And once one person passed the will save, then everyone was fine. But it is pretty fun to just basically plop down a smoke screen on your location and then run into cover. So Torrent in the Blood is a level 8 healing impulse. So a wave of healing water splashes across creatures in a 30-foot cone. Each creature in the area regains 3d6 hit points and can attempt a new save against 1 poison or disease. It's afflicting it. On a failed save, the condition doesn't get worse. That's really nice. A lot of abilities give you additional saves, and it can just make you get even worse off. This doesn't have that problem. Also, each creature in the area then becomes temporarily immune to Torrent in the Blood for 10 minutes. Yeah, so there's some fun stuff here. Additionally, every 2 levels, the healing increases by 1d6. So, this is a fun little bit of healing. Now, the interesting part becomes that you can grab the other healing impulses from other elements, and you can just slap people with a stupid amount of healing every 10 minutes. But I am forgetting exactly how negative healing works, but I think this might hurt undead. No, sorry. It does healing. It doesn't actually do positive damage, which would be necessary to hurt undead. But still, 30-foot cone to heal a bunch of people. And remember, you can actually target yourself with a cone, because cones just originate from one of the corners of your square. So you can choose a corner of your square, then point the cone into your square. You just don't normally want to target yourself with your own cones because you don't want to burning hands yourself. But here, you actually do. This is just nice to have on hand in case you run into something that's pretty rough, like a disease or poison. And also, yeah, this basically makes you immune to disease. Because, so long as that disease is a once-a-day disease, because you can just blast someone with water every 10 minutes until they make a save against the disease. Like, basically, you can just continually blast someone with water until they eventually roll high enough to improve their stage on the disease, and they just keep on blasting until they're cured. Congratulations. Your Super Soaker cures every disease on the planet. But level 12, you get a fun, cheerful little ability called Drowning Sphere, which is the Aqueous Orb spell. I create it somewhere within 30 feet of you, but this isn't just the Aqueous Orb spell. This is also a very clinging Aqueous Orb that has tendrils that can reach out and lash at people or battle within them. Basically, so long as the sphere is within 30 feet, you can make melee water elemental blast attacks from the sphere's location instead of your own. And this can also target people inside of the sphere. So you can just swallow someone up and then start beating the shit out of them. This is really fun. Also, it's looking... I haven't looked at the Aqueous Orb spell before. I'm literally looking at it for the first time right now. So... larger, smaller. If they succeeded at save. It doesn't seem like this has incapacitation, which is crazy. Yeah, they don't have to try and escape. And this is the Aqueous Orb spell, meaning that you do have to sustain it. But still, that's really good. You can just, I don't know. Oh, look, this idiot seems like they don't have a good enough reflex save. Get in the orb. Start holding your breath, idiot, while I punch you to death. So, Glacial Prism is fun. So you choose a creature. This does have the incapacitation and overflow trait. Just keep that in mind. So you choose a creature within 120 feet. They then must make a Fortitude save against your class DC, and if no matter what, they're then temporarily immune for 24 hours. On a critical success, nothing happens. On a success, they're slowed 1 until the end of their turn because they're slowly turning to ice. On a failure, they are petrified, except that their body is turned to ice instead of stone, giving it hardness 5 and leaving its bulk unchanged. This lasts until the end of your next turn, but the target, if it's affected by any hostile action, then it ends immediately. And if they critically fail, then once they become unfrozen, they're slowed 1. This is okay, especially if you're fighting a bunch of low-level people, because it gives you some time to heal up, take a breath, focus on a different target that isn't currently an ice statue. It's not crazy, but it's funny. I wish it did cold damage to them while they were frozen, because they're made out of ice. So if you like use this on a fire giant, they would take additional damage from their fire weakness. Unfortunately, that isn't how it works. So the Barrier of Boreal Frost is another wall ability, because the water element actually gets 2 of them. They get the Wall of Water spell, but they can also get the Wall of Ice spell. And this is actually a heightened Wall of Ice. Unlike pretty much every other wall spell, this one actually gets heightened rather than just increasing based on your level like everything else. I don't know why it works differently, but it does. You can also choose whether or not this ice is transparent or opaque. If it's opaque, it doesn't block line of effect. Sorry, if it's transparent, it doesn't block line of effect. If it is opaque, it does. And again, you have to sustain this, but this can be pretty easy for you to plop down a Barrier of Boreal Frost and also a Standing Surf. So you can have 2 wall effects at the same time, you just have to spend 2 actions a turn sustaining. Sea Glass Guardian might be my favorite kinetic aura. Like, no joke. I think this might be my favorite. So you create an elemental being like an eel of undulating water. Also, by the way, undulating is an amazing word. That is an amazing adjective to make people uncomfortable. Or like an ice jellyfish or something. And it flies around you and retaliates against anyone who threatens you or your allies. This flows around combatants and doesn't occupy an actual space. Whenever a creature in or adjacent to your kinetic aura damages you or an ally in your kinetic aura, the Guardian deals 8 damage to that person. You choose the form of the offender whenever you take this impulse, whenever you use this impulse, which determines its damage type. This could be bludgeoning, cold, piercing, or slashing. If you choose cold, then this impulse gets the cold trait. For every 3 levels past this, the damage increases by 4. If you're fighting someone who has a weakness to bludgeoning, cold, piercing, or slashing damage, they are completely and utterly screwed. Anytime that they take a hostile action or damages you or an ally, which is most hostile actions, they get hit for damage. If they have a weakness to that damage type, they get completely fucked. So here's a question that I am not certain to the answer to, and it really does determine a bit of how useful this impulse is. Does, say, yeah, well, this is kinetic aura, so you just have to be around your ally with spike skin. But yeah, if you do that, someone's gonna have a really bad time. But my question here is, let's say that you have 3 party members and you have aura shaping. So by this level, you have a 30-foot emanation of Sea Glass Guardian. And then an enemy within, let's say, 20 feet away from you, so they're within your aura, casts Fireball on the party, hitting every single member of the party. So this is a hostile action that damages an ally or yourself. Do they take that damage once from one hostile action, or do they take the damage 4 times from dealing damage to 4 different creatures? Either way, I think that this is an amazing, like legitimately incredibly powerful aura. It's just a constant retaliation effect. And if there is a way that you can give a creature weakness to a particular damage type, I think that Impending Doom is a spell that gives someone... no, that's not Impending. Is it Fate? Is it Seal Fate? I know that there's a spell that gives someone weakness to a spell, to a particular damage type. If you can, like, get that on someone, God, this has so much potential for amazing stupid shit. Oh, I love this. I just love counterattack builds in pretty much every game that I've ever played, so this is right up my alley. Now, final 2 impulses, guys. So, Ride the Tsunami is a 3-action overflow impulse. So, each creature within a 60-foot cone takes 8d10 bludgeoning damage with a basic reflex save against their class DC. Any creature that fails its save is pushed 10 feet or 20 feet on a critical failure. Any unattended object of 1 bulk or less is pushed to the far edge of the cone. After this crashes down, you can swim in a straight line to any point in the 60-foot cone. This is alright. Pretty good damage, or, well, no. Pretty good damage for an ability you can use basically every other round for the entire day. And a fantastic area. And it's alright. It's just a big AoE. Nothing all that special, really. Usurp the Lunar Rains, though, is, as you can tell probably from the name, pretty funky. So you just kind of ignore the fact that the moon is the one that controls the tides, and you just do it yourself. So this is an overflow ability that takes 3 actions, meaning unless you take a feat at level 20 that turns it into a 2-action ability instead of a 3-action. You can't do this every turn, but you select a 20-foot burst somewhere within 120 feet, and then you manipulate or create water in your choice of the following 3 ways. First, you raise or lower the water level by 10 feet. You can probably use this in a naval campaign to start tipping over ships, or all kinds of crazy stuff, or just cause a huge amount of flooding. Again, Kineticists are the class for property damage. The other option is to create a a pool of pure clean water. This has to be created on a surface rather than midair and flows normally. So I guess you create water at will, but you can kind of do that as a water kineticist since level 1. I guess it's a 20-foot burst of clear water, which is a shit ton of water. The last one, though, is you make water in the area turbulent or calm. This reduces difficult terrain to calm water, turn greater difficult terrain into difficult terrain, or turn calm water into difficult terrain. But it can't turn difficult terrain into greater difficult terrain. This lasts until the end of your next turn, but you can't sustain it. Honestly, for a name as cool as Usurp Lunar Rains, this is really underwhelming. And I am kind of upset about that. I wish that it was like you could raise or lower the water area by 10 feet in a much bigger area or something like that. I just want huge, large-scale water bending, and I would just really like to see that. But that is actually everything. We've actually covered everything. Oh my god. So I think that I've done a pretty good job of giving my thoughts on the class as I've gone along. But I do have a video that is going to be coming out on Thursday going over my general thoughts about the class and its structure. Again, I haven't actually playtested it, so everything that I'm going to be saying, again, in this stream and in that video on Thursday is going to really should be taken with a grain of salt because I haven't actually played the class, so obviously take what I say with a grain of salt, but come on. Okay. Gotta love spam. Especially when I was kind of closing things up. But basically, I'm going to be covering more about this class, and I'm probably going to be streaming at some point later this week. Not necessarily to talk about this class, but if you ask me about this class, I'd be happy to talk about it more. I really like the way that they actually went with this class. I just think it needs a couple more mechanics that utilize Constitution, and it's going to be in a pretty good spot, although it does need to have some adjustments made to adapt element to add a bit more out of combat versatility. But yeah, that's my initial reactions to every single class feed, every single class feature, and just everything about the Kineticist. So I will be releasing a video on Thursday going over more in depth about what I think about the class roles, just the general game design that they went with. And yeah, thank you all for being here. It's been fun streaming for the past 2 days, although I wish that my internet connection didn't die yesterday. But regardless, until I see you next, live a wonderful life, everybody. Bye.